Hi Year 13, so the poem I'm going over in this video is the Please Hold poem. Now with this one there is quite a lot of repetition, so although it is quite a long poem, going over it shouldn't take too long because a lot of it is repetition. I will, as usual, go over the starting activities that we did and the questions that we covered, just in case you weren't in for that lesson, so that you can pause that and fill that out now, or potentially add to some of the responses that you've already got. So jumping straight into it then, you've got 4 key terms then, so irony, heteroglossia, tercet and caesura. So as I say every time, if you were not in, can you just pause there and have a little go at filling out the definitions of those. Okay, hopefully you went ahead and hit pause there and have answered those definitions, put down the answers for those. So the answers there I've put up on the screen as well. So you've got irony, so expressing meaning by using language that has actually the opposite meaning. Heteroglossia, so 2 or more expressed viewpoints in a text or artistic work. A tercet is a 3-line stanza, and then caesura is a pause in a line of poetry, often caused by a comma or full stop. But as I've said before with that, it can be by a ellipses, use of ellipses, or through the use of a hyphen, for example. So it's not just by a comma or a full stop, it's just commonly by a comma or a full stop. Alright, so we've got a copy there of the poem. I will go ahead and read it as I usually do, and then we will go through it and I'll kind of break it down as I go through it. So, please hold. This is the future, my wife says. We are already there and it's the same as the present. Your future, here, she says, and I'm talking to a robot on the phone. The robot is giving me countless options, none of which answer to my needs. Wonderful, says the robot, when I give him my telephone number. And great, says the robot, when I give him my account number. I have a wonderful telephone number and a great account number, but I can find nothing to meet my needs on the telephone, and into my account, which is really the robot's account, goes money, my money, to pay for nothing. I'm paying a robot for doing nothing. This call is free of charge, says the robot. Yes, but I'm paying for it, I shout, out of my wonderful account, into my great telephone bill. Wonderful, says the robot, and my wife says this is the future. I'm sorry, I don't understand, says the robot. Please say yes or no, or you can say repeat or menu. You can say yes, no, repeat or menu, or you can say agent if you'd like to talk to someone real who is just as robotic. I scream agent and I'm cut off, and my wife says this is the future. We are already there. And it's the same as the present. Your future, here, she says, and I'm talking to a robot on the phone, and he is giving me no options in the guise of countless alternatives. We appreciate your patience. Please hold. Ein, klein, nach music. Please hold. Ein, klein, nach music. Please hold. Ein fucking klein, nach music. And the robot transfers me to himself. Your call is important to us, he says, and my translator says this means your call is not important to them. And my wife says, this is the future, and my translator says, please hold, means that for all your accomplishments, the only way you can now meet your needs is by looting. Wonderful, says the robot. Please hold. Please grow cold. Please grow old, sorry. Please grow cold. Please do what you're told. Grow old. Grow cold. This is the future. Please hold. Alright, apologies first off because where it says, and I'll move my cursor here so you can see, please say yes or no, that should be, and you've got the or can you say repeat or menu there, so sorry about that. Okay, so going through it then, we'll break it down and we will have a little look at it. First of all, I'll just put up the questions I usually put up. So again, not neglecting the title, what inferences can you make from the title? In what ways does the poem's cyclical and repetitive nature convey meaning? And then what do you feel is the main reason O'Driscoll is frustrated? And there's some hints there, so think about powerless, loss of individuality, or an inability to communicate. So as always, if you were not in, just pause there and have a little go answering those so you've got your own critical perspective before I offer you my opinions. Alright, looking at the title then, so we have got an immediate, clear link that reflects the poem. It links directly into it. And you've got this very sort of simple sentence, this imperative, and already there's a hint of the idea of annoyance here, because anyone who has been put on hold on the telephone will say that, you know, it is really frustrating, particularly if you're trying to speak to someone about something urgent. You've got then as well the declarative kind of setting the tone here. It sort of sets the kind of serious tone for the whole of this poem, really. And you've got what his wife's saying here as almost a refrain that's repeated throughout the poem. And it's an interesting structure. I'll talk about the structure in a moment, because structurally this is used almost like a chorus, but as I said, within a poem we'd say that it's a refrain, but it comes back to that consistently. And it's almost this idea of heteroglossia then as well. So we've got her perspective included in this, but actually her viewpoint is very reflective of the poet, of the robots. And she seems almost just as robotic as the actual robot, and doesn't really help her husband. It's almost more frustrating, adding to his sense of frustration and annoyance with this communication, this lack of communication. We're already there, and it's the same. And that description there, it sort of presents the present and the future. They blend together, and it's this idea then, the same as the present. So maybe inescapable, maybe this idea of feeling trapped, which is almost what the writer is feeling, the poet, because he's trapped in this conversation with this robot on the end of the phone, and he can't seem to escape from that. Your future here, she says, and I'm talking to a robot on the phone. So maybe a metaphor for life as well, and maybe that's a bit of a dig at the limits of technology, the idea that, you know, he's trapped by that, and technology is more a hindrance to him at this point than a help, whereas it should actually be helping him, and it's meant to be more efficient, but actually it's not, it's less so. The robot is giving me countless options, and again, interesting there, it's almost like quite quantitative, countless options. There's endless opportunities potentially there, linking to the idea of technology having endless opportunities, but actually there's a contrast here. It's almost juxtaposed with this next line, none of which answer to my needs. So, you know, this technology is absolutely useless, even though it's meant to be more helpful and sort of make life simpler. It's making things harder. And this hyperbole is useless then by the robot. We've got this adjective, wonderful, and it almost adds to the sense of frustration because there's this lack of communication, and the speaker who is trying to speak to whatever service they're trying to get through is becoming increasingly more agitated with this hyperbolic language used by the robot. When I give him my number, and great, says the robot. And it's interesting there as well, because we've got this personal pronoun him, but actually, you know, the robot is genderless, and it's funny how that's used, that actually as humans there is maybe that urge and need to speak to someone who is real, and by providing a gender for the robot, it almost tries to humanize the robot, where actually it's not, it's an object. So it almost personifies the robot, the robotic voice, maybe in that desperate need for him to actually want to communicate with a living human person. And great, says the robot. So again, we come back to that hyperbolic language, which again is useless and adds to the frustration. When I give him my account number, I have a wonderful telephone number. So again, these adjectives, there's sarcasm here, it's frustration maybe building up, and it highlights the absurdity of this situation and that description. I have a wonderful telephone number and a great account number, but, and with this sort of coordinating conjunction, sort of shifting the mood here, the real problem, but I can find nothing to meet my needs. So this feeling of hopelessness, which is repeated there as well, to answer to my needs, meet my needs. On the telephone and into my account, and we've got this parenthesis there, so we've got the brackets being used to insert this sort of additional information, which is really the robot's account. So again, he feels maybe out of control. it puts the account into the robot's control instead, because obviously it's this robotic voice that's controlling this conversation, and he feels maybe quite powerless. So it links to that question 3 then, in the questions that I've given. So this idea then, maybe he's feeling frustrated because he has got a lack of control and power in this situation. Goes money, my money. And you've got caesura here to kind of separate this little phrase, my money. Emphasis there as well on the possessive pronoun my money, to pay for nothing. And that repetition of money kind of emphasising how much he's spending there on absolutely nothing. So the frustration building there again. I'm paying a robot for doing nothing. And again, that sort of simple sentence, that usefulness, again, it's metaphorical, but also maybe again there is a sort of hopelessness to that, frustration with that, in the form of that simple sentence. This call is free of charge, says the robot. Okay, so again, ironic because it says about free, but I'm paying for it. So we've got the use of the adjective free, then contrasting, creating antithesis with the verb paying, and that can be sort of seen maybe as well and interpreted in the way of paying for it. It might not be taking his money, but actually it's taking up his patience and his time. So he is paying for it, but not necessarily financially. I shout out of my wonderful account into my great telephone bill. So, it's saying that it's free of charge, but that there is maybe that conflict of, understanding there, maybe because he is paying for something. He's paying for his telephone bill. Again, we've got that repetition of wonderful, hyperbole there, again adding further to frustration because it's repeated yet again. And my wife says we've got this refrain. There's the irony here now because she's repeating in that almost like a flat tone of the robot. And my wife says, this is the future. I'm sorry, I don't understand, says the robot. So you've got the wife kind of and the robot competing in terms of the frustration and robotic nature of what they're saying and how they're saying it. And it's really ironic as well, the emotive language being used there, I'm sorry, because it's redundant. The robot doesn't feel sorry, it doesn't feel anything, it's pre-programmed, so it's ironic. Please say yes or no, or you can say repeat or menu. So again, you're given, there's this sort of listing is kind of offering all these options which he talks about there. You can say yes, no, repeat or menu, so repetitive but again unhelpful. Or you can say agent if you'd like to talk to someone who is just as robotic. So again, there's like a sarcasm here. I scream, so now that verb sort of showing his increasing rage, he is reaching a breaking point. Emphasised by that exclamatory then when he's sort of shouting the agent, and I'm cut off. So again, that use of the verb cut is intensifying the frustration here. Cut off as well might be more a colloquial phrase here in terms of feeling isolated when you're cut off from others. You feel that lack of communication, and he's certainly feeling that in this poem, where he can't get his point across, he can't go to speak to someone, he's just got this robotic voice who's sort of using this hyperbolic phrasing that's really unhelpful and not really getting him what he needs. And again, we've got this refrain, and my wife says, this is the future. So it's almost like the wife and the robot are merging at this point. We are already there, and it's the same as the present. Your future here, she says. And again, we've got this sort of repetition now from the writer himself, because he's repeated this line to us previously, and he is giving me no options in the guise of countless alternatives. So again, this antithesis between having the no options but yet countless alternatives. We appreciate your patience. So again, it's that irony, because the patience there, that emotive language, he hasn't got patience, he's lost his patience at this point. We've got the repetition here, so the please hold, the juxtaposition here as well of sort of the writer's rage with the robotic's kind of ill-equipped ability to deal with that anger, and this refrain here, the anaphora, and that mention of the Ein klein Nachmusik. It's Mozart's music that's usually played when somebody is put on hold, and you've got the increasing anger emphasized by the expletive here as well. and the robot transfers me to himself. So again, it's almost like going around in circles, which kind of links to the title of the poem, because we end with please hold, and the title itself is please hold. So it's that cyclical structure, again sort of showing that he's trapped, he can't communicate clearly, and his frustration builds. Your call is important to us. So again, irony, it's meaningless actually, because again he speaks this monochrome voice, and actually that's what everybody's being told. Every person that's on hold at that point, it will be told the same thing. He says, and my translator says, this means your call is not important to them. So, you know, again, it's kind of that irony. He's juxtaposing the idea of what the robot's saying with the reality. And my wife says, so again, this building frustration, this refrain of his wife, this is the future, and my translator says, please hold, means that for all your accomplishments, the only way you can now meet your needs is by looting. So it's almost a rebellious aspect now of this. So no matter what accomplishments you've achieved, the only way that you can progress anywhere, there's almost a primitive response that actually you need to engage in violence, in doing something illegal, in doing something wrong. So that verb kind of highlighting that kind of stark contrast to the technology then as well. And then we've got this tercet. So we've got these lines then that are isolated on their own, and these simple sentences, these simple imperatives. Please hold, please grow old, please grow cold. There's a loss of humanity here, technology kind of taking over, and that lack of warmth. Please do what you're told. So there's again be that idea maybe of being enslaved by technology, that it's inescapable, that, you know, he's really highlighting the kind of drawbacks of technology here, and that idea of the being held back by technology. Grow old, grow cold, this is the future, please hold. So, you know, it's a very bleak outlook as well for in the poet's mind about, you know, technology and what it does for us. But again, emphasizing that kind of cyclical structure, because it comes back to the title of the poem. So, you know, really sort of starts on a negative and sort of ends on it as well, with this sort of growing frustration, and maybe even the tercet there being placed on its own, emphasizing the real message that the writer's trying to put across about sort of the drawbacks of technology and how it kind of holds us back in a lot of ways, and particularly that lack of communication, because as humans that's kind of what we're built for. We are sort of meant to communicate with others and network with other people, and by sort of using technology, that kind of limits us, and it kind of takes away that face-to-face interaction. So on to our themes then. Language and truth, really a really key theme really that's explored throughout literature. What is meant to be understood and what is actually inferred is often explored in literature, and that's certainly present here, where we have this kind of miscommunication. Society and culture, so again in this one it's kind of that shift towards technology, and showing how actually that's quite it's holding us back maybe as a society, because there is that lack of communication. Power, the importance of power, and how actually a lack of power can lead to this feeling of frustration, and a feeling of kind of feeling quite dejected really, and feeling that you've got that lack of control, which can be really kind of detrimental to mental health as well. Technology, so you know that's clear as well in this, where there's that impact and the effect of technology, and sort of whether actually in some ways it's really holding us back. But that's sort of what we can see being displayed in this poem. It's a really sort of interesting take on how technology is inhibiting us really as humans. As always, I've got the bibliography there again, so those are some of the sources I've looked at then to kind of reinforce what I've thought the poem is trying to tell us, and I'd encourage you to have a little look as well, see what else you can add there from various sources. And as always, if you have any questions, just drop me a little email or drop me a message on our Google Classrooms.